There we are.
Okay. So, Molly, damn it, I was supposed to review how to say your name. Is it Secure
Secours.
or Secours? Molly Secours.
Secours.
Thank you so
It's
much for
it's
joining me.
French. It means help.
Really?
When you're on if you're on an airplane, Air France or something, or anywhere in Paris or anywhere in France, it's sortie de secours, the emergency exit.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's interesting. I was wondering because I heard the oh my God, deep dish. That's one of the videos that I was watching to prepare for this conversation. And I heard I can't remember his name. What's the guy's name that
Jerome Moore.
Jerome, yes. Him pronouncing it. And I was like, oh my God, I have to make sure to ask her how to pronounce her name before I record. But that didn't happen. But
That's okay.
I'm so glad to see you.
I'm so glad to see you. I've
It's
been
been a minute,
following you on
right?
the, I know. Has it been 2 years or
Yeah.
longer?
So it might be a little longer because I think it was 2022.
Okay. So it was a couple years after COVID.
Yeah, wow, wow.
Yeah. At AC after COVID.
Oh, okay. And so we say that. So I met Molly at my opening. Was that the opening or I probably met you a little bit before the opening of my exhibit, which was
I think
featuring
I met you the day before the
the day
exhibit.
before. Yeah, featuring my quilt, Successions Traversing U.S. Colonialism, and it was at a gallery in Nashville, Tennessee called Tenney Contemporary. And
It
we
was
have been
wonderful.
Thank you. And we have been at least Instagram friends since then.
I know. Well, it's the way of the world. Every time I try to get off, I've tried 100 times to get, I mean, 100 times
To get off
to
Instagram.
get off Instagram, get off Facebook. And I really, there's part of me that really wants to because I long for the life without the barrage. Like everybody says the same thing, but every time I get off, there's something pulling me back. And between friends and also work wise, getting the word out about what you're doing or finding out what other people are doing. I mean, I find out people have died on social media
Oh,
now. And
yeah.
remember, it used to be
So
you'd go, oh my God, I can't believe I found out on Facebook that so and so died. And now it's like, oh, did you
that's where
see?
you
Yeah.
go, right? And that's where
Yeah.
you're alerted to some of these things. Like, and it feels so there's a level of detachment, but then like reattachment when you hear these things, you're like, oh, it's like an
Yeah.
acknowledgement, like a realization, oh my goodness, I have been detached from that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now finding this news in this way. It's a
Well, it's catapulted me recently. It's catapulted me into reaching out personally more. I have been doing that, and especially since what's happened here, I actually started a group of women friends who are all artists of different kinds. I mean, puppeteers, writers, potters, actors, filmmakers, and I called it the Knitting Club because and I did this. I was knitting when I broke my ribs this past fall, so I was kind of like knitting my ribs back together by just sitting here knitting scarves and cowl necks for people, and then I was like, I need to be face to face with some of these people that I've known for years, and we're all off doing our own things, and so we had our first inaugural knitting club meeting the other night. And it
wow.
was amazing. But I'm trying to do more of that to be more intimately connected because, I see what everybody's doing online, but it was so nice to be in the room. It
Yeah.
was, yeah,
And especially now that, COVID has subsided a little, or I shouldn't say a little, a lot. It's good to remind ourselves that we can be in person, that we can be in congregation with each other. And that's part of what life is supposed to be about, the relationships that we lead and we build and we foster. So I get it. It's a whole different world. Okay, so I wanted, to have this conversation. The show is called Art, Life, and Social Practice, and I think was it you? No, no, no. It was someone else. I was preparing to have one of the next conversations with, and I was like, yeah, this is going to be the second portion where I'm actually talking to someone that I would consider doing social practice, meaning you.
Mm.
And
Mm.
because the rest of the people have been artists, and I'm trying to find the conversations between artists and social practice and find the continuum between the two because I think that they're absolutely interconnected and essential. Um, so I've asked you, and Molly, you are a counselor, writer, author.
No, I'm a filmmaker I'm a filmmaker and audiobook narrator is what I do.
Okay.
And so, yeah, my old life, I used to work in the prison. I worked with the Oasis Center with teenagers, but that was in my old life. So
So,
now I'm a filmmaker. I've been working on a film for about 8 years, and I narrate audiobooks.
so what do you consider, are you, how do you consider it your old life in the sense of like, oh, not wanting to talk about your old life or just as,
Oh, no, 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 no. I just meant that I just don't do. I mean, I used to work with youth in prison, and
yes.
I taught writing and filmmaking in prison, in the prison, in the
Yeah.
video. I mean, I taught video, not, and it was in a very limited capacity. It was really, I was assigned to teach them life skills,
Yeah.
but I brought in video, I knew the principal. I got to be friends with the principal at the juvenile, the not the detention center, but the actual juvenile prison. And he started letting me bring in the camera as long as the footage wasn't going anywhere. And so I
Mm.
created this class where we would basically, they would recreate on paper, like in through art,
Yeah.
and then through story, and then on camera telling their story. So there were a couple different components. We would start out with them actually drawing out the river of their life, like what happened on these riverbanks that had landed you here. And so, yes, for about 10 years, that's what I was doing with the Oasis Center. I was working, you
And
know,
where was that base? Where
it
did you
was here in Nashville.
there in Nashville? Okay.
Yeah.
And so tell me, because I definitely, that's one of the things I came across and I was like, oh, this is deep. So how did you, because I'm assuming you brought your love of film to this, but how did you decide, was this the process that you went through in terms of your learning and practicing as a filmmaker, or did you cultivate it for the kids, or how did that process?
It's it's all in one. I wasn't a filmmaker before I did this. I actually became a filmmaker as I was doing this. I made it up in the beginning. I was like, what can I do to help? Like my goal was to go in and see something in them that they couldn't see themselves. That was like
Yeah.
every session. That was it. It was like, so I'll reflect one thing back to these kids. And you've got this is another generation, and this again is in the mid to or late 90s, early 2000s,
Mm-hmm.
when I started doing this. And so I came up with this thing, and I talked him into letting me bring in the camera. So this process that I created, I called it Bend in the River. And they basically, by the end, they were writing sort of the story of their life. And some of them like really took off. One guy ended up writing 60 some pages of a screenplay before we finished. And it was amazing. And he did it all by hand. He doesn't have a typewriter or anything. Um, and so doing that, then I started teaching video in community centers. So I would go in and say, let's tell a story that you want to tell. And most of these kids would be either at the community center after school trying to stay out of trouble, or they were already in trouble. And
Mm-hmm.
then I started working with court-ordered kids, where they were the current judge at the time. It was Judge Betty Green, and then it was Sheila Calloway after that. But Judge Betty Green said, you can either do more jail time or you can go do this program. So they would get me or jail time, basically.
Yeah.
And so and so the very first, there was one film that ended up, it was called Welcome to My Hood. And it was with four youth from North Nashville, which is an area that's primarily Black and Latino.
Mm-hmm.
It's very financially challenged, and all of them had come through the court system. And they wanted to make a documentary about who they were outside the crime they committed.
Wow.
So we made this documentary, and it ended up running on the documentary channel for 2 years. So then I started a filmmaking program with and I don't remember the years or the order of this, but with the Nashville Film Festival, started a youth filmmaking program there, and then I started a youth voice through video with the Oasis Center. And during all this was my sort of, I was going to say my renaissance, but it was really my personal recognition of how I had never really, I had empathy, I had compassion, but I had never dealt with my own internalized racial bias. And I was working at Oasis, and so I took off 2 weeks in my summer vacation from the Oasis Center, and I went to Fisk University to the Race Relations Institute
Yeah.
and spent 2 weeks like being fed. And it was like, and it blew my mind. It turned me inside out. I left every day almost crying. I mean,
Mm.
being faced with, I had people asking me direct questions because I was one of very few white people at this conference. It
Right.
was 1997 maybe. And, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing was one of the keynote speakers. She she ended up talking to me in the lobby for an hour in between sessions, and she had been talking about white privilege, which I had never heard of in my entire life.
Hmm.
And she challenged me, and she said, "Look, if you really want to do something about racism, because I mean, I'm embarrassed to tell you where I was, like that, my understanding, because I remember telling her." Oh, she said, so what do you think about this notion of white privilege and, what that means to you and who you are and the work that you're doing?
Yeah.
And I said, oh, I'm not privileged. I grew up in a family, we were on public assistance. And I mean, I went into the whole thing with her.
Yeah.
And she, I gotta say, she changed my life because she listened to me. She let me say all this stuff, and she said, "Look, if you want to do anything in your lifetime and help, bridge this gap, and you want to do something about systemic racism, you will tell people of color what white people say when they're not around." Yeah, and that was the key one. And she said, and you will spend some time looking inside yourself and figuring out how you've participated in this. And of course, those two things were terrifying,
Yeah.
and all of that. And this was before, I had written a couple of columns before this for the newspaper. This is back in the day. Not everybody had a blog. And I was getting guest editorial spots with the Tennessean. I
Mm.
had gotten a couple of them. Well, once I started digging into this stuff, I go to this conference, and there's James Earl Jones and Nikki Giovanni and Chuck D and Desmond Tutu and Tim Wise, who ended up becoming, a really good friend and a mentor,
Hmm.
who was the only white man I'd ever heard talking about whiteness and privilege.
And
And
he
to this day,
absolutely does that. Yeah.
oh my God,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but it just, it opened up my world. And so I took that back to Oasis.
Yeah.
And so we started having conversations, we started having dialogues within the organization, because I was working in an organization that was about 80 to 85% white women. And we were serving a population that was, it was probably the reverse.
Yeah.
And so we started asking some really tough questions. And of course, there was, Oasis was a progressive organization, and
You
pretty
kidding?
much everybody there found themselves to be thought of themselves in a particular kind of way.
Yeah.
So we started challenging ourselves organizationally, and it got pretty heavy and hairy.
I'm
Um,
sure. Quickly, right?
quickly. And then I started writing about, I wrote this thing. So out of going to the Race Relations Institute, I became familiar and then eventually very good friends with Dr. Ray Winbush, who was the director of the Race Relations Institute,
Hmm.
Naomi Tutu, who was also there, Theda Murphy, and I. They asked me to be on the advisory board of the Race Relations Institute. So I was on the board with Tim Wise, and we were the only two Caucasians on the board. And I started doing workshops with Dr. Winbush. I mean, we did one at Illinois Power. So I was really, really immersed in this consciousness and this awareness. And it was very, the beginning of this was, well, even it's painful now, but the beginning, it was really tough for me to like face that I was part of this system and that I had benefited from it, and it was, and I said all the things that you hear people say, well-meaning white people say. And I mean, now, I mean, I kind of smile, but it also, I had to have compassion for myself and also allow for there to be compassion. And I wasn't for a while for my first couple of years of really delving into this stuff and doing the workshops. I was, I was a little bit, I had a little bit of an ego about it. It was kind of like, oh yeah, I was the white person that got it, and I got validation from people of color, which meant a lot to me. I mean,
Hmm.
I went through all the, stuff.
So what's interesting to me about that, because I don't think that people realize how one embedded race is. We have allowed for race to be in our social system, right? And I don't think that we are aware of how that system is so interconnected with our individual and then collective ego and understanding of self, and then the collective in relationship to your group. It's funny, I
Hmm.
start signing when I get emotional. And that's a sign for group, meaning the people that you are have been identified or assigned with. I
Hmm.
don't think people realize the how how distinctive and instinctual it is, and it's connected to the ego. And that's why people struggle
Yeah.
so long, so hard, and so much so that it's almost a sickness.
Yeah. I think it is.
I think it is as well. And
Yeah.
you know,
Because there's a disconnect. I mean, there's a disconnect there.
there absolutely is. And in some sense there has to be, right?
Yeah.
Because imagine if one day a switch was turned on and the white people in the world, and it's not just white people, because it's yes, people of a certain hue, right? Meaning the racial, the makeup, the amount of melanin that they have in their skin. Um, if they, because they benefit from this this understanding that we have about white supremacism, right? Or white privilege, or even white adjacent, you know.
Right.
If one day that switch was turned on, imagine how this, the amount of people, what they would have to face
Yeah.
about themselves, about their culture, about their family lineage, about America, about Europe.
Which is why we are where we are. I mean, this is how
Absolutely.
we got this, this is how we got these figureheads who are, I mean, and trying to put the lid back on it because it got too far. And all this stuff came up. I mean, and I really do believe that, Obama being elected was a catalyst for the reaction of, because people started being faced with, but, it was so accepted and it was just natural that we had a white male president. It was just the way it's always been. It was the way it was always going to be. And then, and I remember I was, I had started, when did I start? I guess I started a couple years after, during Obama's first term. I
Hmm.
guess Trayvon Martin was killed in 2012, was it? Yeah.
I
I,
believe so.
yeah.
Either that or
So
2013. Yeah.
trade, yes, it was 2012. So it was at the end of Obama's first term,
Yeah.
so somewhere around there. And that after Trayvon Martin, that's when I started writing White Privilege Pop Quiz. I mean, this whole thing was going down, and George Zimmerman and all these, all the reports and everything. That's when I started. And then when he got elected again,
Hmm.
I was like, well, I guess, I mean, I kind of, it's not like I went, oh, it's all solved, but there
Hmm.
was part of me that felt like the conversation and now, and people were starting to address some things. And I was like, oh, my book's just basic. It's really the story of my revelation about
Hmm.
how race played a part in my life. So, it's not that big a deal.
Maybe you don't need it. Maybe people
Maybe you
don't
don't
need
need
it.
it,
Yeah.
And then there's all this talk about being post-racial with a what.
Oh
So,
God, yes. Which
you
was,
know,
yeah,
yeah.
I think that was a mistake. One of
Well,
many.
and that's what, and I guess what we're talking about is that ignited something that didn't get spoken of above a whisper for a long time. And people pretended they had policies, they had diversity policies that were pretty shallow and sort of like, yep, tick that box off once a year. They did it, but and then when 2016 rolled around, when
Damn.
and these people didn't like change their mind, they were given permission.
Yep.
That's the to me that's kind of it's like, and then when we saw the permission that was granted those years, and yeah, it's, I mean, and now it's just full blown, and the bros are in the house, and yeah, it's pretty wild. But I have to say, I'm just going to say this because this is where I am right at this moment. Because I know everybody's tweaked. I'm tweaked. I can't remember anything. I lost my keys for 48 hours this week. I couldn't find. I mean, seriously, like there was. I couldn't figure out it, and it was like they evaporated and went into the next dimension and then came back when I was.
Yeah.
But I do believe I do believe that this is not 1939. There was not technology in 1939. There was not there was not any of the means of communication. There was not the organizing. There was also not the naivete that existed. And I only mean naivete because we know more of what's going on in the
Mm-hmm.
world now. And so pulling this off in long term, to me, is impossible. And we have to keep remembering there are a lot more people who are decent, compassionate, if you want to, and I don't even want to say because it's not really even justice. It's just human, human beings. What's in the White House right now is not quite of human level. I mean, there is something grossly, and it is an illness. It's an
It absolutely
illness.
is. Um, it absolutely is. So, like, you're so good at talking that you like answered like my first like couple of
Oh
questions.
God, sorry. Yeah, once you
Okay, it's
wind me up.
okay. But so I wanna, because I'm always interested in the journey, right? What gets people to where they are, and especially because, as an artist, and then I know you being a writer also, sometimes people kind of talk themselves out of their passions for an extended period of time until life kind of throws them at it, like giving them an ultimatum to some extent, right? And I want to know, so you said that you were coming to terms with your own biases, right? In terms of how you came to prior to working with or even during working with the teenagers, the students, and teaching them film and teaching them to look at their own lives. Like, can you from this vantage point, can you see where Okay, so wait, let me backtrack. In one of the interviews that I heard you do, you mentioned how you could, as a child, you could see, although you couldn't see racism in your own environment, right? Your own family environment. And that was because there was only like one a person of African American descent who was a sports basketball player, right? In
He
the
was, well, he played basketball in high school. Yeah.
Okay. But before that, you talked about seeing inequities in the Native American reservations
Yeah.
around you. Was that the earliest time because I want to say your conscious mind, right?
Hmm.
Or your unconscious mind, said, "Hey, look at this." Is that the
Well,
first
it
time you
wasn't quite,
recognized?
hey, look at this. It was, I I used to get like I was pained and would get emotional when riding the bus to school and seeing and hearing what kids were saying about the kids that got off that lived in the reservation, or how they were referred to or making. And I didn't have contacts, and I didn't have language, but
Yeah.
I felt I was very, very sensitive to that. And I was very sensitive to anybody, any kind of bullying or anything. Like I never was bullied myself or anything, but I couldn't bear it. And there were some guys on our bus that were bullies, and everybody was terrified that they were going to come and sit next to them. But
Hmm.
they really focused their energy on, the Native Americans that were, and they were always less than. And it just like, that was my first, but it wasn't, do you know what I'm saying? It wasn't awareness. It was just like, ugh, it was painful and horrible. And I would do whatever I could to like either say hi to them or go sit next to them or something like that, which in and of itself, again, there's this unconscious privilege. I knew that my giving them attention was somehow going to help them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
And or that it helped you feel like,
well, there's that. Yeah.
yeah. So, but
Yeah.
my thing, Molly, that is absolutely the universe pulling you and saying, do something about this. And
Yeah.
in retrospect, and I know, like, so for example, like your character, even back then, not only saw it, but decided to act on it. Whereas there were other people on that bus.
Well, I didn't know that I was even acting. It was
I
like
know,
a,
I
yeah.
know.
Um,
My whole like sometimes when I'm doing these things, meaning these talks, I want to point out the little droplets
mhm.
because the droplets are important, and we're not encouraged as much depending on your social constructs, where you are, your culture, and sometimes ethnicity. We're not always given the support when it comes to these little diamonds along the way.
Yeah.
So I wanted to
Yes.
bring, and I'm glad because you added to that story, but yeah, that I think that was
Yeah, that probably
some of the
was.
threads.
Yeah, I didn't even realize it. And it's funny because I didn't when I mean I left there, I think I was just 16. I had just turned 17 when I left home. I graduated at 16. I left home at 17. And so I've lived all around, never really thought much. I mean, I didn't, I lived in different places and I lived in cities where there were lots of, like I lived in San Francisco, in this San Francisco Bay Area.
Hmm.
So I got out of that environment. So I was lived in places where there were lots of different people and lots of different cultures. But I never thought much about it until I was moving in 1994. I was moving to Nashville to be with my then boyfriend, who became my husband,
Yeah.
and is now my ex-husband and my really dear friend. But when I was moving here to be with him, I was coming here sight unseen. I was coming here to be with him. I'd never visited Nashville. I didn't even do like a let me go check it out. I just came, and I
Wow.
was in LA acting at the time. and I quit acting and I moved here. And on the plane coming here to be with him, I heard a voice in my head. I'm saying to myself, the hell am I doing moving to Nashville, Tennessee?
Mhm.
And I heard a voice said, there's a lot of work around racism and you're going to do it. I mean, it was like clear as a bell. And I immediately, the ego mind went, what? I am not. I mean, it was completely put it out of my head.
Yeah.
It wasn't until probably 3 years later that all of a sudden I was like, oh, here I am in this environment. It's the way it always works. You end up landing where you were always meant to be, and that takes you to the next thing and the next thing. And that's where then that was, I was right 2 miles from Fisk University, you know.
You were
And
what?
well, I mean, the shelter that I started working at was 2 miles from
Oh,
Fisk
okay.
University, which is basically, I feel like Fisk University is where I became who I am. I feel like
So
Fisk.
I know you kind of led into that a little bit in terms of your relationship with Fisk and how it because it introduced you to Dr. what is her name? Dr. something.
Dr. Winbush is he, Dr. Ray Winbush. Oh, you're talking about Chris Welsing. Oh,
Yeah.
Francis Chris. Yeah, Dr. Welsing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. She was a guest. Yeah, she was the guest speaker there.
So, is there anything else that you feel like was pivotal that you got from your relationship with Fisk University?
Oh God. Yeah, it
Yeah.
changed. I mean, yeah, I started doing workshops with Dr. Winbush, and like we got called to go to Illinois Power, and he asked me to partner with him on this workshop, and we drove to Illinois Power, and Illinois Power was having a situation where the linemen were hanging nooses from the towers to
Oh,
intimidate. This is in 1997, 1998, or maybe it's 98. Um, and so they asked us to come and facilitate conversations. And I mean, it changed and so I go into this, and it's a very blue collar working class environment. And there were guys not unlike energetically what we have in the White House now. And they were not real well educated, but had a lot of bravado and a lot of certainty about their rights to yield power over others. It was very simple. I mean, it was like bros on steroids, but these were bros on the power lines. And I remember when we were driving there, Dr. Winbush was like really specific with me about the route we were going to take, and if we got stopped, and who I was, and I mean, all that stuff. I'd never,
wow.
all of a sudden I was introduced to the world of what it means to be Black.
Yeah. At
Um,
least you
and
associated. Yeah.
and my presence was, if it was the wrong person that stopped us, my presence was probably going to be more of a danger to him than
Yeah.
a help.
Yeah.
So that was another thing that twisted my mind up. And this is one other situation, and you kind of reminded me of this. One of the things that, and it had to do with when I was saying to you that, me going to sit next to somebody in the bus or maybe speaking up for someone, which I didn't do a lot of that, but it was like I didn't know what to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I had this revelation. I was living with my then husband out in the country, outside, about 25 minutes outside of Nashville. And I was at a gas station one night. It was about 10 o'clock at night. I'm filling up my tank, and there's a African American gentleman who, on the other side of the same, thing, he was
Oh,
putting his gas in
yeah.
on the pump. Thank you. And this was a Friday night, and a truck pulls up with two Confederate flags, and three guys get out of the truck, and they stand there, and they're looking. And I am very aware of what's happening, and they're watching this guy. So I think of something to say, and I begin engaging him.
Yeah.
And so, could you have, I don't know, I was just doing this, and so they're standing there watching me. They eventually went into the store, but it dawned on me that I probably had just put his life in danger. But, I mean, I may have made the situation work, and I had to like, I started looking at things differently because
Yeah.
I had my white hero hat on. I thought I was doing something good, and my intention was to deflect.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because I could see that he was definitely aware of I mean, of course he was. It was where it was going on, what was going on. But it's just that just being in a position where you're encouraged or nudged to evaluate the situation and realize the
From a different
dynamics.
lens. Right.
It was the first time I ever realized that I did indeed play a role in social dynamics, and it was my first time understanding that, and each moment is a choice.
Yeah.
Um, and which is part of the privilege too, is
Hmm.
this, and my unawareness about it. um
But also
and
that because as it relates to then outside of yourself, meaning how your awareness of then the man and then the truck, the
mhm.
flag of your, your your environment, period. And I guess I want to like expand on that because it's one of the things that basically people of a certain hue, and I yes, white people, but it's also people that don't have a certain amount of melanin. And I like to make the
Yeah,
distinction
yeah.
because that variable that you were talking about, like you saying hi to, or you engaging him could either go left to help, right to help him or left to not help
Hmm.
him, right?
Right.
But it's the awareness that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
It's the awareness beyond yourself, your understanding of the social environment, your understanding of the how any situation outside of being white can be a racial, a potential racial situation. If that makes any
Right.
sense. That
Yeah. Yes, I mean, and I think, again, for me, this was early on in my exploration. I
yeah.
mean, I was probably just a couple years in at that point. I mean, when I met Dr. Welsing, I was a hip white liberal who thought she was down with the people. I mean, and
And
it seems silly and embarrassing to say, but it's really, I did not, I had no idea. Um, and I remember one of the things that I did at that time, and I wrote about this in the book, is that I decided that I was going to go through the day and with consciousness remembering
mhm,
my identity and how it impacts my life all day long. I was
yeah.
going to do it every day, all day for, a month or whatever it was.
Hmm.
I mean, that most days I didn't get past 9 o'clock in the morning. And then I would start over or would start
Yeah.
at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But even that exercise of me saying, okay, now I'm going to be aware of my race because I'm now meeting people who are aware of their identity and what it means in this
Okay.
culture all
Every
day long. There's no break
yeah,
from it. The
God.
stress of it. And, I started understanding the physical stress, the emotional stress, the financial stress, all of those things that didn't make sense, and that understanding came to me as I turned the light on me, inside of me, because so, and that's why people think it sounds airy fairy, and it's like, no. If you want to do some work, if you want to do something meaningful, work on yourself first, and it'll follow. I mean, it will have an impact. This whole, I'm going to go out and save everybody. I'm going to go out and,
Mm.
I'm going to do all this stuff. It's like, great. do the work here first, then step out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very spiritual practice. It's for me, it's, um, I happen to, I've always been this way since I was a kid. I'm not a religious person, but I've always been drawn to light. Light has and I haven't, I didn't quite understand it until, many, many years later. But, you go inside and get in alignment with the light, and then you act according to what comes to you,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's through intuition or some kind of inspiration or joy or something that is pushing you from the inside. And I got that twisted a lot. I used anger that lived inside me for my activism, and I did that for a number of years. And I
Mm-hmm.
probably did a disservice to in more than one situation where my ego got the better of me. Again, I for a while had I was the white person who got it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a terrible place to be. Not a terrible place, but it was not helpful.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of people that didn't listen to me because I was probably there was judgment inside of me
So they couldn't
around
hear the message.
couldn't get the message.
Right.
and
Yeah.
and
And that's a lesson that most of us have to learn in some shape or form, about how we utilize our passions or anger or concern, um, in the sense where if we double down in it too much, what we're actually concerned about doesn't come across.
yeah. And
You
if
know,
I'm making
happens is
you wrong and
emotional.
bad and
Yeah.
or
And
whatever it
that's
is,
that's extremely hard when it comes to race stuff. I
it
mean, I
is.
I definitely feel that way, or definitely sometimes I have to, and sometimes I can't. Oh my God, sometimes it just comes and you're like, holy, inside, I'm like literally, holy shit, Amber, pull it back, pull it back. And and sometimes I can pull it back, but sometimes it's just
Yeah.
out there.
And you know what? When it comes out there and you don't hold it back, I believe what I believe is that is all purposeful too. Even the times where it comes out sideways, that person called in for something to come in sideways and disrupt
And
them.
that's
So,
it. Woo.
and you just have to keep forgiving yourself over and over and
Yeah,
forgiving other people over and over because
it's
everybody's
true.
and this is interesting because this has to do with not just race, but our current situation with this person who's now taken over the White House
Mhm.
and that whole group,
Mhm.
is that there are a lot of people that are now, ironically, the anti woke contingent is waking up to what's really happening. And a lot of them are in pain. I mean, a lot of the people that voted for this, they didn't vote for this, they
Mhm.
voted for the person who lied to them about what this really was. And now they're angry and they're upset. And some of them, I mean, especially right now, there are a lot of people in the farming communities that are going, oh
Heard.
my God.
Mhm.
And that's just the beginning. But what's interesting to me and what I have keep saying, to myself and to other people is don't use this as an opportunity to chide them or I told you so or they told you that's what they were going to do. Project 2025 is it's like, no, you have compassion for those people too. It doesn't mean that it's not irritating. It doesn't mean that it's not frustrating, but the idea is to not dehumanize people further because that's what gets people to double down. Nobody wants to be wrong. Nobody wants to be made a fool of. And yes, many of these people were manipulated, and you know,
Absolutely.
some people are just entrenched in their deeply, deeply generationally entrenched
Great.
in racism,
Yep.
and again, still that what's underneath that is a whole nother level of not feeling good enough and all that stuff. But but for the people that really did believe they were going for something different and somebody was going to help them because they bought off on the story, I mean, I do. I don't feel sorry for them. I just want people to have a chance to have revelation so that we can be more united. Because I really do believe that in the reuniting, this is how we're going to deal. This is how we're going to turn this around. And I believe we
Either that
are.
or we're all fucking doomed because
Or, yeah, yeah,
if enough of us, if enough of them, because I didn't vote for Trump's ass, but enough of them don't get it, don't see it in terms of what, how he ushered in the oligarchy, like if they
yeah,
don't make that connection, then we're in trouble.
yeah.
And
And
not
so
only
you
make
want
the
to,
connection, but actually, and then actually act upon it. Act upon the fact that you made a mistake. What can I do differently? How can I look at this over this like change? Because they're gonna have to go through almost like a reindoctrination.
yeah. And the way to bring people in is I see you're in pain about this. I know you got fooled. Okay, move on. We all see it. You saw it differently than me, but now we are seeing the same thing. So it's kind of, you just got to invite them to the party.
So
Um,
let's talk about white privilege pop quiz, reflecting on whiteness. Tell me, so from the vantage point of right now, how is your book? How can your book be applied? Bam.
okay, so I'm just going to tell you this because this just happened 3 days ago.
Okay.
So, and I'm gonna say it out loud because it's real. So my book came out several years ago. It came
Mhm.
out the same year as George Floyd. The year that's when I mean, it started with Trayvon Martin, and then I re-edited it after George Floyd.
Mm,
Um, and there was a lot of activity around it. It was actually in the local Parnassus bookstore here, which is owned by Ann Patchett.
mm.
It was number one for 4 weeks on the bestseller list, and I
Wow.
got knocked off by Obama and Dolly Parton, which I was very proud of. Um, but anyway, the reception was really great, and Parnassus did this great. We couldn't because it was COVID, so we couldn't. I didn't get a book signing. It was all done on Zoom,
Wow,
but
yeah.
there were hundreds of people, and it was a really good. It was a really great conversation, and I had a really good run for about 6 months of lots of Zoom calls, people using it in book clubs. They're
Yeah.
still doing it now. So that was all great. My intention and my hope with the book is that it was going to be included in curriculum, and it was going to either be in high school or college, because I was
Mm,
like, get them, because there's nothing about my book that is what do I want to say? It's self-confrontation.
hmm
It's not, there are some books out there, there's some bestseller books out there. I'm not going to name names or whatever, but a few of those books that have been touted or whatever, I mean, they're in your face. Not that they shouldn't be,
hmm
but it's not an invitation into self-exploration without punitive measure, without feeling bad. Not
Yeah.
all, I'm just saying, and that book has, I mean, some of those books, they totally have a place. Those are for people that are ready for it. My book is I've never done anything. My book is what? We live in a colorblind society. What? I mean, that's who my book is for.
Yeah.
Um, and for people who are progressive who haven't done the work. I mean, not that many white people or people who identify as white have done the work of wrestling. And it's 13 questions, 13 chapters. And in each chapter, I ask a very simple question. And then there's probably maybe 6, 8, 10 pages, depending on what the chapter is, about how I came to that question and
Mm,
what that question brought up, and I give examples. And at the end of each chapter, I ask a bunch of questions. And
hmm
so it's a pop quiz for yourself.
Yeah.
And it's better to me, it's more meaningful if it's done in an environment with other people. So what I was going to tell you is that this in the last month, I got two requests from some people at Vanderbilt. One was to teach a course, an extension course, and the other was to do with a department in the medical field, working with professionals. And they are reading my book and wanted me to do a Zoom conversation.
Nice.
Canceled 3 days ago because of DEI policies. Vanderbilt University is not standing up to this authoritarian right wing MAGA administration. Vanderbilt, I don't care. Vanderbilt University that has a $10 billion endowment. Now, I understand nonprofits very quickly because they're, these
The
small
funding,
nonprofits,
right?
they're
Right.
funding. But a university that has a 10 billion, why are you rolling over? Why are you not filing suits? They can afford the suits. And because just even the symbolism of that. So
Yeah.
don't you dare call yourselves a progressive institution of higher learning that
Yeah.
challenges ideas and is preparing young minds for the future. I'm sorry, but I was devastated, not for me personally, but for what it meant and what it means to others. So I'm very hyper aware right now of
Mm.
who's using their power and privilege
It's not.
and who's not. And at this moment in time, everyone needs to use the voice that they have because there are way too many people that don't have one. And I don't mean screaming and yelling. I mean, there is no reason. We had a situation um, in our city last year involving the arts, and where there was the Thrive grants that were given out, and those were for BIPOC artists.
Hmm.
And that's been going on for 10 years. And they're very small grants. They're like 2,500,
Hmm.
maybe 2,500, 5,000, not large grants. But for the last, I believe, 10 years, and I might be wrong on the time, but it's almost 10 years, and they've been thriving them. They're not through an organization. It's funding individual artists who are not part of large organizations to expand who it is that's contributing and able to do their art in our community.
Yeah.
So last year, the Supreme Court decision comes down around Harvard and how you couldn't use race as a factor, right? That was about higher education, and it was a Supreme Court decision for Harvard. Well, in Nashville, which is a blue progressive, we have a progressive mayor. What they did was Metro Legal said, "Oh, the Harvard decision came down," and so they denied these grants to these Thrive artists. And it became a huge thing. And I'm not going to go into it now, but I'm not trying to denigrate the, Metro Legal or the administration, but this is the perfect example of cooperating and capitulating even beforehand.
Yeah.
We could have done the thing that was fair and right, um,
Set an
and
example.
set an example and said, okay, if they sue us, we'll go to court.
Hmm.
No. And so what there was a lot of it's been a lot of controversy, and there are many, many layers to this, and this is a simplification. But to me, this was one example of the way that you do not cooperate with systemic racism. We know that this is BS. We know that this is right wing, authoritarian level
Yep.
dictation, and that we fell for, under the auspices of, oh, we need to adhere. This had nothing to do with education. This was about arts, and
Yeah.
this was about equity. And so these are these are the levels that needs to be dealt with locally. People locally need to counter this stuff. And I'm proud to say I know a lot of people that are down at the Tennessee legislature right now, every single day, They go to the city council meetings. I go when I can. But I have friends that are documenting everything. They're writing about it. They're getting it out. And I'm kind of proud of some of the press around here that have really been, I mean, we've got smaller press,
Mm.
Tennessee Lookout, um, Holler, Tennessee, the Nashville Banner, the Nashville Scene. You know, these are news outlets that are constantly looking at this stuff. Um, and, I mean, in some ways, it's like the many-headed hydra. You cut off one and it comes back. And, there's lots of stuff to keep you busy. Um,
Absolutely.
but now is not, and I understand wanting to pull back and not wanting to be pummeled by the news, and you got to take breaks and you got to do things, but acting like nothing's happening is not is not really.
Oh, it's even more dangerous now to
Yeah.
not to act in that way,
Yeah.
to kind of recoil.
And it's a privilege. It's
Oh,
That's part of the privilege is like, yeah, I'm going to take care. Yes, take care of yourself. And and a lot of people have been putting out a lot of things lately on about taking care of yourself, making sure that you're playing, making sure that you're being, definitely go have fun. Don't shut down and be miserable by everything. It's not an either or thing. Like I'm not going to know anything that's going on and I'm just going to have fun. It's like we got to do it. We can't let them take our joy, you know. And for some of us, I'm a little, I'm older than I used to be. It's like I don't want to go out miserable. I'm not going out. I'm not going to spend the next, whatever I've got left.
yeah.
Um, but I'm also not going to pretend it's not happening. So I'm trying to do things locally. There's things that I do privately in my neighborhood and with people that I know are sort of in the margins and are much more at risk than me. I mean, the only way that I felt it personally so far has been this thing, being told that they're not going to do
Right,
the
Vanderbilt.
thing around the Vanderbilt thing. I mean, it impacts me more probably emotionally than anything else.
Yeah.
Um, and it makes me more committed. It made me more committed to like, I think people should know about this and talk about it.
Oh, I
And
definitely.
Vanderbilt should be challenged big time. And I think they're going to be. I mean, who are you? Who are you who are you and who do you anticipate bringing in with this decision? What kind of students are you? What kind of mentality? What kind of consciousness building are you looking to to produce over there at Vanderbilt?
Yeah. And is that how you want to be remembered in terms of history?
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, so I definitely read your one of your articles, the reparations bandwagons, a white woman's perspective.
yes.
That was really interesting. And then,
That was
one
from 1998, was it?
oh, it was 2001. And I thought, holy fuck. Yeah, I'm probably not supposed to curse on this, but I thought, wow, to look at this and to think that this is still what we're dealing with, meaning this subject matter is still so relevant. You could literally republish that again and put 2024 or 2025, and it would still be accurate. And that
Yeah, I guess so.
saddens
Yeah,
me. Saddens me.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
I-
it's quite something. I mean, I still there are times where I wake up and I go, I can't believe we're here. I can't believe we're still here.
yeah, yeah. I agree. And I guess I brought it up because I was like, okay, you choose some really, I don't want to say they're controversial. I think they're important things. They're crucial things to have conversations about in terms of the progression of our society, you know. And I wanted to know what do you, and I do advise anybody that encounters this conversation to please go back and read that. It's a really good read. But I want to know, what are you writing on now? What are you writing about now? Or are you writing? Can you share?
I am I'm writing I'm writing about some things in my life that I've never talked about before. So yeah, it's very personal writing right now. And
Okay.
that's yeah, I did that just started a few months ago.
Okay.
Um, and I'm still working on the film that I've been working on since 2014, the baseball film, which got put on hold um, when COVID hit. But I'm still working on that and trying to get that out into the world. So I'm doing some writing on that. There's not really much writing. It's just sort of more, it's more moving the chess pieces around in this, in the story. It's now turned into a 9-part series. So I'm doing a little bit of writing. Yeah, but most of it is just stuff I haven't faced in myself. And so I'm writing about it. And one day maybe I'll share it, and maybe one day I won't. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah,
So you just reminded me of sports. Do you watch do you pay attention to football?
not really.
No?
No, I mean, not only like I'm a for most sports except for baseball, just because I've been working on this film.
Yeah.
But I love championships. So I watch, during March Madness, I'll watch some stuff.
Hmm.
Definitely the women's. I got it hooked into that last year.
Hmm.
Um, and but I did not watch the Super Bowl.
Oh, you didn't? So you didn't see
No.
Kendrick Lamar's performance?
Oh no, I saw that. Yeah, yeah, no, I watched that. Wow.
Okay, so can we talk about that real quick? What do you
Yeah.
think
I
about it?
mean, the I thought it was one of the more Shakespearean, brilliant, um, crafty, uh, oh my gosh, I don't even know what the words are. I
Very,
thought
very strategic.
strategic. It was such a and what was so fascinating is it demonstrated the level of, oh God, how am I going to say this? The level of those who opposed vehemently and didn't get it.
Hmm.
Um, it exposed how deeply unconscious and how um, unaware
Hmm.
and how little perspective this a administration and the again it comes back to the political, but most people that were upset were people of that ilk. There were a lot of it. There were a lot of older people. It was like, I don't get it, and it was just kind of like I don't know anything about rap. I don't get it.
Hmm.
A lot of, and I saw a lot of comments like I couldn't understand what he was saying, that kind of thing. That's different than
Hmm.
the opposition, and that it was okay. I'm just going to say this. It was pearls before swine.
Wait, I don't know that phrase.
Pearls before swine. It's an expression that is used that it's gems before it's like laying out gems in front of a pig.
Uh,
It has no idea of their value. It's like pearls before swine. And
Interesting.
I mean, I just thought it was brilliant, and it
So is that
was.
phrase?
um
Wow.
but I mean, everything about it, and the choreography
Yeah.
was like the that circle where the
Maneuvering, yeah.
it,
And the him being in between the flag and so, it's so because I'm an artist, right? And so I always and not to, this is not against Kendrick Lamar, right? In the sense where to plan something like that, you you need there's like layers to it, right? And so I'm wondering who else contributed to that because
oh yeah, there's
who
yeah.
is who were the minds? Like I'm sure it was Kendrick, but I want to know who else because there has to be somebody else that was in tandem oh, Kendrick says this, and he's like, and this person, whoever it is, male or female, says, if it could be broken down like this, and then, oh, I just know there was, and it might be more than a, I'm just, because it was so layered.
Yeah. No, and it was, I don't know when do you find out that you're going to be the Super Bowl entertainment?
No, I have no
Yeah,
idea.
I have a feel. My feeling was, oh my God, he was aligned with some really great grassroots, you know, consciousness organizations that,
Mhm.
because it really was that. I
And
mean,
even if it all came from him, even if the concept all came from him, then someone who, in terms of choreography, had to match that. There was, so I want to know who was the team. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean, I wonder if that'll be something that is
I hope it's
comes out.
something that comes out.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
hope it comes out. Yeah, I I mean, I deliberately, I mean, I didn't see the Super Bowl, and then not even an hour after the halftime thing, I got online and I ended up watching the whole thing.
The whole
And
game?
no, 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 I watched
Oh,
the
oh,
whole,
okay, yeah.
yeah,
Because
the whole,
I don't do football.
yeah. I
Yeah,
couldn't, yeah, it's whatever. That's a
I
whole other
get it.
conversation, but
Yes.
um I just thought it was, and it was interesting too. Here's another thing that was interesting. Because I posted something on Facebook and Instagram, and I saw these posts by, you know, I don't know if they're, I don't know how to identify anybody, but white guys who are probably in their 50s, 60s, whatever, and a lot of musicians too, like
Mm.
saying stuff about this was not, this wasn't jazz, or or whatever it was, and just reacting and putting out there that this was not very good, or half baked, or bunch of whatever, and then seeing a day later, after they had
Uh,
read some breakdowns and watched it again and realized what they didn't understand, came
uh,
back and said, I spoke too soon. So
wow.
that I kind of thought was cool.
So what this reminds me of, okay, is, being an artist and then having people write about your artwork, right? And, I'm an artist that also, in terms of, I have a degree. I have two degrees. And the art related one, I have a master's in fine arts. And when I purposely took the route in which, because all of my early education was entrenched in magnet schools, right? In which
Oh, yeah.
I was one of the few colored people in an all white environment. And so when it was came time, and I try not to judge. I'm not judging my mom for making those decisions. She made them, and I'm appreciative. But when it came time for me to make the decision to go to college, my undergraduate degree, which is in business, I went to an all women's school, and then I went to Howard University. So I purposely chose environments where I would be around people of color because I needed to counter, right? But
Mm-hmm.
but still a good portion of my education and or the art industry itself is from a white European lens. And so when writers start writing about your work, one of the things that they do is they don't necessarily do the work when it comes to your cultural vantage point.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not, and I get it. We still live in a very white driven world. And so it's not required of them. And it's only those that have a non-white, you know, dominant culture themselves, right from a different vantage point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that this reminds me of that. This situation reminds me of that. The
Yeah.
people that don't have not thought outside of themselves, have not only saw that as entertainment, have not done the cultural work, the just it just even in terms of it just exposing themselves to things beyond someone else's entertainment.
Right. Yeah.
Then of course they look at that, oh, it's just another performance.
Yeah.
But to me, it says a lot about the viewer, the critiquer. The
Well, and it makes sense because look at the value that this culture places on art in education. I mean, the budgets have been, I mean, now will there be any, and we'll see.
yeah,
And
that's
and 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 while we're on the topic, the Kennedy Center.
somebody texted me recently. They were like, "Have you seen this?" It's an article about the Kennedy Center, why you should care about Trump taking over the Kennedy Center. And I said, I haven't read this, but let me guess. It's a Nazi Hitler taken out of the Nazi Hitler playbook. And the person said, "Yeah," and then they give examples. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm aware. We should all be mindful of this because it's absolutely in play, the Nazi Hitler Trump playbook.
Yeah.
That's what's being enacted.
Yep.
Um, so Molly, we have like 3 minutes, and it's funny because I feel like we haven't seen each other in what, like 2+ years, but I still feel like we could talk for hours.
I know. We just went through the
Yes,
two Zoom sessions.
yes. But so I want. Can you, for the people that encounter this, this conversation, how do they get in contact with you? What do you want to leave them with? Like your,
You can, I mean, if you want to reach out to me, mollysecours.com. There's a thing where you can just send me a direct message on there. Um, or you can email me at mollysecours@gmail.com. And if you're curious about the book, some people that want to have a book group. I love this year there was a whole rash. There were like 7 people on Instagram that responded. I gave books away. No, I was like there were 17 actually. I gave books away and said if you would have a book group discussion, I'll give you because I had a box of books. I don't have them
yeah,
anymore, but I do have one though. Here's my book. I love the artwork. I'm just going to say this. There's a woman named Jessie Chapman in Nashville who did this, and I love the book. Anyway, and I'm always happy to do Zoom conversations or facilitate or whatever. I'm I'm I'll never get tired of, talking about it. And again, it's really just it's very conversational. The book
yeah.
is very, very conversational and the questions are easy. And for some people, they might even seem like they're just, you know, I think when you dive into them, then that's when the depth comes. So, and I can see we have less than a minute
I
left.
know it's gonna cut us off. So I'm gonna stop.